My name is Frank Dirks, and I'm with Carolina Catholic Professionals, and we are delighted and honored and blessed to have with us today Ms. Doris Hazel. She is a parishioner at St. Patrick Catholic Church in Charleston. She is a lifelong Charlestonian. She is a graduate of Hampton University, 32-year teacher. The pride of her life are her two children. And great pride in a 40+ year marriage to a wonderful man. And we are delighted to have her with us and to talk about her life and her experience growing up in Charleston, in Jim Crow Charleston, as an African-American Catholic. So Doris Hazel, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. And we look forward to this conversation.
And thank you, Frank, for inviting me. And thank you for being a very persistent person, because I'm sort of a little reserved and not too anxious to be in the forefront all the time. But I'd like to say that I'm Doris Edwards Hazel. My maiden name was Edwards. My father was a small contracting business. My mother was a housewife. I'm child number 6 of 8 children. I always felt that the family could not have done very well without me, and I wondered how they made it out until I became 10 and reached the age of reasoning, because I sort of kept everybody straight all the time. I have 4 brothers and 3 sisters. There are 3 of us surviving. I have a brother, Charles Edwards, in Los Angeles, and a younger sister who lives west of the Ashley, and then I'm the oldest of the 3 survivors. My life growing up was not exceptionally terrible, because my parents kept us close, and we had our own group of friends, and Immaculate Conception School was filled with relatives, filled with cousins, brothers, sisters, and it was a closely knit group in which everybody felt extremely comfortable. I went to Avery, and Avery was the exact same way. The doors were locked at the school at 8:30, and you did not leave until the end of the day. It was well controlled. We had teachers primarily that came from out of town. I felt that I got a really good education, and my teachers encouraged me to go to Hampton University. As a child, I was an avid reader, and I had good friends. And the problems that I really had was sitting at the back of the bus. It made me want to walk everywhere. I just did not like sitting at the back of the bus. Another problem I had was when we went to the movies, we had to sit upstairs. There was segregation with the movies, and the white children sat downstairs. During my time, we were called colored, and they were called white. And every Saturday, I had some friends, and we would go to the movies, and oftentimes we walked to the movies, and we walked back home from the movies. And we did that just about almost every Saturday as a pastime. In high school, I graduated valedictorian. I've always been very proud of that. And I think that helped me to go to the college of my choice, because coming from a family of 8, there was not a lot of money to send children to college. I had an older sister who went to West Virginia State for 2 years, and then she finished South Carolina State. I was determined not to go to South Carolina State. And there were no SAT scores, any SAT tests at that time. So I didn't know whether my father could afford to send me to an historically Black university, which was very expensive during that time. But because I was class valedictorian, Hampton offered me a nice scholarship, a great scholarship. So I was able to go. He couldn't stop me. He just could not stop me. And I was glad I was a little bit unstoppable. I have a strong personality. Nobody would realize that, but I'm sort of set in my ways and very determined. And I think that helped me through. At college, we had an exchange program with Antioch and Grinnell. And there were 3 white girls and 3 white fellas who came to our college, and they and 6 of our students went to their colleges. I put my name down to go, and I think I would have been chosen, but then I backed out. I got a little touchy about that. Another thing I want to bring out, though, too, is that life was not all that bad, though white people did not understand us. They could not, because if you did not live that life of segregation, it was very hard to be understood. And I understood that. But we just had our own world in which we lived. We had our own society, and everybody was friendly with everybody else. My family, I think 2 of us went to college, 4 years, and my younger sister eventually finished college. So there are 3 out of 8 who are college graduates. And I don't think that's too bad for a family of 8. My mother was a very good mother. She stayed at home. We always had hot meals. We always had clean clothes. The house was always immaculate. And I always prided her for being that way. I never wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I always wanted to be a career woman. But the right man came along in my life and made me a mother of 2 wonderful daughters and 2 great, oh, I love them, granddaughters. I cannot forget my Lauren and my Brianna, and Debbie and Sylvia are my daughters. Debbie has no children, and Sylvia, who lives in Virginia, gave me my 2 granddaughters. And life has been all right. I went through a very, very sad time in my life. My husband was ill for 6 years, and I took care of him. And he spent 6 months in the hospital in 1992 and died October 16th, 1992. It was one of the saddest days of my life. But God was great to me and helped me to continue. And when I had grandchildren, I closed up my house and lived up there until they could go to preschool. And I stayed with them. I just gave my life to my children and my grandchildren, but most of all, I gave my life to Jesus Christ.
Well, you mentioned your husband, and it's always nice to know how a couple that lives a beautiful marriage met. How did you 2 meet?
That's strange. I'm glad you asked that. My husband was 5 years older than what I am. I went to college for 4 years, found no one there I really wanted to marry. Came back home. Let me say too, I had an opportunity through Margaret Mead, the anthropologist, to remain in Virginia and attend the University of Virginia in Charlottesville and get a degree in social work because I had a double major, sociology and English. And I would have had to have stayed there 2 years to get the graduate degree and 2 more years to work to pay them back. Old-time mothers, my mother she wanted me back home. So I had to come back home. I guess that changed my life. I came back home and there was this man living 5 doors away from me. My family knew that family. The Edwards family knew the Hazel family extremely well. He was 5 years my senior. He saw me when I was about 22 years old, and we fell in love and we married. He was 29 and I was 24 when we got married. And Joseph Manigo Hazel was his name. And I keep telling my children, you'd better be glad your daddy came along because you wouldn't be in the world. And if I had defied my mother, I probably would have been a Virginian all along and never would have come back home. But because this happened, I guess you never know what's good for you in life. And in a way, if I didn't come back home, I would not have been able to have been the teacher that I was at Burke High School and helped many children to become doctors, architects. I'm very proud of the children that I taught, lawyers, And some didn't do very well, but many of them made something of their lives. And my married life was a happy one. There were problems, as everybody would have some problems, but not serious problems. And he always allowed me to be the boss. And I guess maybe that's how it worked out okay. I was the one who made most of the decisions. After 5 years of marriage, he came to me and he said, Doris, you know, I notice you handle money better than I do. So I'm going to let you handle the money. I felt very good about that, and I did. And we've been living in this house that I'm living in now for 60, at least 63, 64 years, the same house. We bought it in 1957 and moved in 1958. And so that I've been living right here all that time. When we first got married, we lived in an apartment on Bogart Street for 5 years. We didn't like that. We didn't like renting. So we quickly saved money to purchase a home. And I am grateful, very grateful that my life has turned out like it is. I am 92 years old. I'll be 93 in February. My health is pretty good. I still drive a car. And in, let's see, in 2008, I decided I'd treat myself to a Lexus. And so I did. So I still have my old Lexus, which I just got out of the shop yesterday. And I'm happy about that. And I'm going to continue driving until someone tells me, I think you're doing a dangerous job. But I am set in my ways, and my children understand that. When the desegregation came along for my children to leave Immaculate Conception to go to Bishop, England, they weren't very happy. The white kids weren't happy, and the colored children, which we later were called Black in 1967 or on, they weren't very happy about it. But they made the best of it. And actually, it was a case of the white children didn't want them, and the Black children didn't want to be there. But my children stayed with their friends, and I noticed the white children stayed with their friends. Deborah has been back to college reunion, high school reunions, and they talk about the fact that the white children talk about the fact that they're sorry for what they did and the way they acted, and they wish they had accepted them more. But I think we all have to be very understanding that change is difficult. It is difficult. And it's very difficult for a white person to understand exactly what a Black person has gone through during their lifetime. It's very hard. And I try to be open-minded about it because I have had white teachers, many white teachers at Hampton, which I liked very much. They were excellent teachers. And I tried to be open-minded about everything and knowing that everybody is not the same. We have many racist white people and we have many racist Black people. So it works in both races. But I try to accept people on a person-to-person basis.
Well, what was it like? Because as a Catholic, you talked about Immaculate Conception and that transition there. As an African American Catholic in Charleston, what was that like? How and how did your faith kind of guide you through this time?
I remember when we had the three different churches. The three were Immaculate Conception. We had St. Peter on Wentworth Street, and that was the church where I was married. I married in St. Peter Church on Wentworth Street. And then we had Our Lady of Mercy. So we had three different churches. No white people attended our churches, but we had white priests. Most of our priests were white Holy Ghost fathers, and we loved them dearly. They treated us fine. And when Bishop Antakafla became bishop, they gave us St. Patrick Catholic Church. That was a white church in debt, deeply in debt. So we inherited a church with little finances, but we made it go. 3 or 4 of the white families stayed. I remember Mr. Richard Bailey was a wonderful white man. He stayed. The Bailey sisters stayed, and there were some other people who stayed, but primarily all of them left. And we kept St. Patrick Church going. And I'm happy about it. And Immaculate Conception Church eventually burned, but the other churches closed. And they raised St. Peter Church and put the convent there. And the Oblate Sisters lived there for a while, but I think they used it for something else since the Oblate Sisters are no longer in the city. But I found out that I could go to the cathedral when I wanted to, and so I did. I went to whatever mass I wanted to. St. Mary's on Hazel Street were not very accepting. I had no problem with the cathedral, but we worked through St. Patrick. Bishop Antikofler was a very good bishop, and our first Black priest was Father Egbert Figaro, and he and Bishop Antikofler got along very well, and so it helped us move on with St. Patrick Church. Having a bishop on our side really worked extremely well, and it was Father Figaro who remodeled that church, took away the pews downstairs, gave us the meeting area downstairs, gave us restrooms downstairs, gave us offices downstairs, and gave us a little kitchen downstairs. And so all of the masses were held upstairs. Once upon a time, they used to hold some down and some up, but he was the one who did the complete renovation of St. Patrick Church and made it as it is today. He was deceased. He died in the 90s, sometime in the 90s. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. What do you remember about Immaculate Conception Church there, which was at that time on Shepherd Street, and Shepherd Street was, you know, kind of that portion of Shepherd Street was, you know, plowed under by the construction of the Crosstown. What do you remember about Immaculate Conception Church? And
my memories of those of Immaculate Conception Church was going to that church on Sundays, primarily with my children, my little children. They were little girls then. And that's my favorite memory of that. And there, having the adoration of the Blessed Mother, and having going to receiving their first communion, and going to confirmation. And I have beautiful memories of the Immaculate Conception Church. I had a niece by marriage who had her wedding at Immaculate Conception Church. It was not a beautiful church. It was a wooden church, a very plain looking church, but it was a peaceful church. And we were very unhappy when the Crosstown came that way, and we were very unhappy when it later burned. But I have memories primarily of going there with my family. And my children, my girls, have talked about going there for Friday Mass from Immaculate Conception School, walking that area to go to Mass there on Friday mornings. And that's about all I could say about Immaculate Conception Church, because it's been so long that it's been gone. It's been gone a long time, Frank. So that's about it. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the story about how it was closed, or why, or was it because of the Crosstown, or?
I think it was closed because of our inheriting St. Patrick. I think that was the main reason. I don't think the Crosstown had anything to do with it. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I think the other churches closed and molded us into one group, into one major church. But Our Lady of Mercy did not join us right away. They stayed over on America Street, and they had their own masses, and the priests had to go between the two churches. And finally, they decided, after Father Henry came here, that they would come on over to us. And I think I gave you the year. I forgot what it was, but it was it's 2004, or 5, or 6, something, that they came and joined us at St. Patrick. But they have their own Mass at 8 o'clock. And we can go to their Mass, but primarily the 8 o'clock Mass at St. Patrick belongs to the people who went to Our Lady of Mercy. And they handle everything. The 6 o'clock Mass have varied people. And the 10 o'clock Mass at St. Patrick really deals with primarily St. Patrick Church people more than any others. In my older age, I usually attend the 6 o'clock Mass on Saturday. I started because it means that you don't have to get up and rush to do anything on Sunday morning.
Well, what when you talk about Immaculate Conception Church, there was also the cemetery there, St. John Cemetery, just adjacent to that. What do you know about the cemetery? That was obviously a passion of yours for some time.
Yes, we really didn't realize completely that, there was a parish. The school was once there on the Cumming Street side. I don't think we realized thoroughly that there was a cemetery there until the crosstown was being built. And I think they took some of the cemetery. And then a lady by the name of Louise Ganvier Street, she was a college professor in Greensboro, Dr. Street. She saw something in the paper about widening the crosstown route. And she alerted the bishop that they were widening it and they were going to take some of St. John's Cemetery. But she was the one who really brought it to our attention. Other than that, I would have been oblivious to the fact of what was going on had it not been for Dr. Louise Ganvier Street, because she has relatives buried there. And she didn't want it taken by the crosstown route. And we wrote letters and we tried our best to get it memorialized, but we didn't get the first base with that, but it went on for about 4 or 5 years. Finally, we gave up, but the bishop did have it enclosed to the fence and had the name put up, and no memorial, no monument was put. We even worked with the priest then, Father Lewis of Calvary Episcopal Church, because our cemetery is right in the backyard of Calvary Episcopal Church. And he's now deceased, but he came to our meetings and he met with us and he went through the Chicora project. And now I think we have it to the point, and with the graciousness of your Carolina Catholic professionals who are taking this on for us, thank God, I think something good is going to come of it. But it's keeping the people who are interred there for being placed under a crosstown route, which would be terrible. I think some are already there and there's nothing we can do about it. But I came across you, you gave me the list of the names, Frank, and I noticed there are several Ganviers buried there, and Louise Street was a Ganvier. There are a lot of Noisettes buried there, and there are some Pezants buried there. I went through the list and I noticed there are 18 people with the last name of Smith. And so I don't know whether they're all related or not. But we had a cemetery association, and Wilfred Steplight was chairperson. Joyce Wellington was on that committee, Amelia Taylor, Rovina Owens, and there were several others. And we went, and Joyce Wellington worked for the News and Courier for a while. And that's why we were able to get an article in the newspaper under the Faith and Values section. And they took a picture of us standing by the only tombstone that we could find that had not been buried under the ground. It was one of the few visible grave markers at the St. John burial site. And the reporter, I think he was Konstantin Venjurovsky, and he did an excellent article on our trying to preserve the cemetery. And and then I'll be honest with you, Frank, that ended. That just ended. And nothing else was done about it until you brought it up. You called me, you had a meeting. I went to the meeting, and you've had more than one meeting, and you've been very persistent. You have not let me rest from St. John Cemetery. You have been a constant thorn in my side with this, for which I'm truly appreciative. I respect you. I really appreciate your personality. I appreciate your warmth, your friendliness. You just came into my house as if you've been knowing me for a long time. And I feel as if I've known you, even though you're young enough to be my son, and the age of my younger daughter, I just feel that you are sent to us by God to do this. And you actually seem to me that you're not going to rest until this gets done. You are so persistent, and you won't let me give up. Sometimes I like to plead the age factor. Frank, you know I'm 92 years old. I had 2 doctor's appointments. I had my car in the shop. But you did not give up. You said, well, I'll bring my computer to your house and we'll Zoom that way. And I'm very grateful that you have come into my life. I wish you'd come a little earlier, but I'm grateful for whatever time you came.
Doris, I am blessed to know you, and you've been just an extraordinary blessing in my life, and I feel the Lord's grace working through you, and I'm better off for knowing you, no question about it. You've described a little bit your interest in not just St. John's Cemetery, but other cemeteries.
Yes.
Clearly,
Yes.
we want to right this wrong, and we want to bring a proper memorial, and we want to memorialize the souls interred in St. John for their faith, and then also to remind all of us that their faith is an example for us all to look to Christ and his cross for our salvation and our hope. That's certainly how they live their lives, and we hope and pray that they're in the communion of saints now, or well on their way. But you have worked on other cemetery projects. Tell me about those a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yes, I worked with, I don't know whether you know Judge Richard Fields or not. He became 100 years old not too long ago, and he has his good mind. He was a judge for quite a long time. Brotherly Cemetery is where I have family interred. Grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts, uncles, mother, father. I need the fence there. There are things needed, and I'm about to go in debt to get it done myself because it's bothering me a lot. There is Friendly Union, Unity and Friendship. There are about 5 or 6 Black cemeteries right near Magnolia. They're not far from Magnolia. We had been meeting with the Preservation Society about those cemeteries to get them marked as historic sites so that no one can take them from us. The meetings have since stopped. We used to meet in a lawyer's office on Meeting Street, and we met until the COVID came, and then I think that stopped the meetings. There's a young woman now, I think, in charge of the Preservation Society. The older man that I knew is no longer there, and he met with us, and he had an architect to come and designate the markers that should be put at each cemetery, declaring that an historic site. Because Frank, many of those cemeteries were started back as early as 1856. I have one it's written on one of the gates, and then I have a book with the notes, secretarial notes from Brotherly Cemetery, that elderly people who lived in the 1850s and 60s took minutes of the meetings that they had because they started these cemeteries. And they are private Black cemeteries that are not maintained by the city, and they have to be maintained by us. I pay dues in order to pay for the cutting of the grass, but that's just for one named Brotherly. And the other people at the other cemeteries, I guess they do. But unfortunately, we've had several deaths, and 3 people who were in charge of 3 of the cemeteries have since died. And so I don't know who will replace them or not. And Judge Fields is in charge of ours, and I work with him, and he's elderly, very, very, very elderly. And but he still has his mind, and we still depend on him, and he handles our finances. And but those are the cemeteries I am also in hopes that somehow, I don't think the city can take them. I don't think so. But we still need historic markers, and so I seem to be a person interested in the dead people all the time.
Well, Catholics, we're called as we are in faith to um, bury the dead, respect the dead, honor the dead. The Book of Tobit is our shining example for our responsibility to bury the dead and tend to them as Catholics, and we take that as
Serious.
seriously as anything. It is a work of mercy. So, um, if you said they're up by Magnolia, I'm kind
Yeah,
of curious now. Are they just right outside Magnolia? So if you
the
those would
outside,
be
no, you're correctly. Do you know where McCarthy's Monumental is
yes,
located?
yes, ma'am, yes,
That's
ma'am.
where they are, right to the right, to the right. They're right up there. If you drive up that side, you can drive right all around through and you will see them. Some of them are overgrown with grass.
Yep.
One of them belongs to Emmanuel Church, I think. And I was wondering
Uh,
why they didn't have a job with it.
yeah, no.
It's
If I recall, there's one of the victims of the Emmanuel massacre is
right,
buried there.
that's right. And then there's one called Reserve, and some people, with some volunteers, had been going up there cutting the grass themselves for the cemeteries, white and black people, both. And they were interested in them. And the Pepsi-Cola company is not too far away. And I always had my reservations about maybe, they may want to expand and that could take over because they're right down the street. Uh, but so far, nobody has done that. But we don't have any historic markers.
Hmm.
And the grass is overgrown in many of them. And Judge Fields does a pretty good job, though, of handling getting somebody to cut our grass for brotherly. And if the money runs out, he puts his money there. So, and he can afford it.
Well, in
So,
all due respect to the judge and to you, after 92 years and 100 years, one would think that you've done enough. There should be other people who can kind of pick up the
yeah,
mantle, right?
bothers me. You're absolutely right. That bothers me that younger people are not coming up. And we send letters to family members who no longer live here, but who have families interred at our cemetery. And we get very little response, very, very little response. And I can take my own family, for instance. I'm the only person who seems to be interested and who pays the dues. I mean, and there are other people who could do the same thing that I'm doing, but they do not do it. But that's my interest. I hope that my daughter, who she lives with me sometimes, you met Debbie, and she has her own home in Durham, but primarily she stays here, I think, for the amenities of having someone who cooks. But she seems to be interested, and I'm hoping that she can take my place. I'm hoping that she'll do that because she does attend the brotherly meetings with me and she has an interest. She does have an interest in the cemetery. So I'm hoping that she will. And I want to thank my younger daughter, Virginia, who walked me through to tell me what you were going to do today. So she helped me to because I was a little anxious that it would be more difficult than what it is. But I've been very comfortable here with you doing this
Well,
talking.
that's good.
I haven't been hard at all. I hope I've offered some insight as to how life was. Uh, it was so hard, though. I don't want to back up a little bit um, about the black-white thing. It was just so difficult in not being able to eat at a restaurant that you wanted to, not being able to. Oh, and I remember this very well. Going to Hampton, the train coaches for the white were air conditioned. The coaches for the black people were not air conditioned. And it reached the point that if there were a black person who looked like white, they went ahead and went on the white coach that was air conditioned. I know that for a fact that happened. And that made life difficult. I think, and when my parents came to my graduation, my oldest brother drove them to my graduation. My youngest sister came, my oldest sister came. We could not stop at any gas station and use a restroom. We could buy the gas, but we couldn't use the restroom. And that was traveling from Hampton, Virginia, back to Charleston, South Carolina, which was quite a distance not to have a restroom. That made life miserable. That made life miserable. And I find it so much better now for our young people. Racism still exists, it's still very prevalent. It hasn't left, but at least they have more opportunities. And I'm happy that my grandchildren finished college. One has a graduate degree, she went straight through. The other one is working for the Department of Defense just out of college last year. And so I feel that I would never have been able to get jobs just as they have in my time. So things are some better, but I went through a little bit of bad times myself, but I made the best of it. That's what I did. I just feel in making the best of whatever you had. And you read books to escape the world in which you live.
Well, I can't help but notice the plate you have in the background.
Yes. This is St. Patrick Catholic Church. We had Joan Mack was in charge of our anniversary celebration, and I bought that and I keep it to the front of my church, front of my house. And I have the Our Father prayer that somebody gave me, I keep to the front. And my older granddaughter went on a trip, and she went to Cuba just before everybody could not get to Cuba. And she brought me back a rosary. And Father blessed it for me. And so I put the rosary there. So that rosary is from Cuba. And I chose this site of my house because of the St. Patrick Catholic Church being in the background. And I went through the house, and the daughter in Virginia told me, okay, that's the spot, use that spot. So I said, okay, because I was going back in the kitchen, Frank.
She has a good eye.
Yes, she had
Well, Doris, I can't thank you enough for your time and your commitment and enthusiasm for this project. Again, it's all of our responsibility to remember our brothers and sisters who've gone before us, because we'll be there with them one day, and we hope those who follow behind us will remember us as we try to remember them. So,
don't forget about St. Peter Cemetery too. That's up there. I think the diocese maintains that, though.
Yes,
that's my husband is buried there, and that's where I'll be buried, there at St. Peter Cemetery. We called it St. Peter St. Patrick. We slash it because St. Peter Church no longer is there. There was something else I wanted to bring out. I can't remember now what it was, but I wanted to bring out something else about the church and about we actually need to stick together to make things work. And I want you to say, what about the fun? I wanted you to mention, this is what I wanted you to mention, the All Souls Day, which is Monday, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So we're have a service at St. John Cemetery at 12 o'clock on Monday. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, are you going to mention anything about fundraising and anything?
Well, this is part of our effort because we want others to join us and in this effort, and we'd love to hear more witness and testimony from folks who have a connection to the cemetery as well. So you're the first, and we're delighted to have you do this for us. We're blessed to have you do this for us, and you are a charming and gracious soul, and I think you make everyone's life better for having known you. So anyone who comes across your path is blessed for that. So Doris, I want to thank you very much.
And I thank you. I really, really, really thank you. You don't have to do this, Frank. I guess this is a calling. You have something that a lot of other people do not have. And I know you are grateful to God for it. There's a quality in you that does not exist in many, many people. And I'm thankful for you. God bless you always.
And God bless you, Doris. Thank you.